Today we come to a favourite part of 1 Corinthians chapter 15, where Paul sets out the programme for the resurrection in response to the first question that he identified in verse 35, how are the dead raised up? It's a passage that is full of hope, particularly as we think of all of those believers, some who were very dear to us, who have died and whose bodies have been laid to rest in the earth. We're going to read verses 50 to 53 of chapter 15. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, neither doth corruption inherit incorruption. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. Paul has been explaining the fundamental difference between the natural body and the spiritual body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body, he writes in verse 44. The bottom line is that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, verse 50. Living on this earth where we are now in our mortal bodies, the decaying process that is associated with it is very much in operation. Although we are living, we are in fact very much dying. Such a body cannot be heir to all that God has planned. A category change is required, and it will happen. Now Paul explains how when he writes, behold, I show you a mystery in verse 51. The mystery he writes about is not actually the resurrection. That's a subject that we actually read about in the Old Testament, because Job said, though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, in Job 19 verse 26. The mystery is we shall not all sleep in verse 51. This is a reference to the rapture that we also read about in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. It is a New Testament revelation from God. Not all believers will actually die. Paul refers to we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 15. And therefore, not all believers will have to be raised, but we shall all be changed, verse 51. Every single believer will participate in that necessary change. To put it a different way, the change is necessary for the future, but death, the normal transition, is not. That's what Paul is emphasizing in this chapter, the transformation at the Lord's coming. Whereas in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, he's emphasizing the translation, dead and living, caught up together in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. It will be an instantaneous change in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. We shall be changed, verse 51. The idea in the word moment is really an indivisible moment or point of time, like an atom of time. A twinkling is the involuntary jerk of the eye. It's like half a blink. I had an old uncle who used to say, in a moment of time, the rapture of the saints will be a thing of the past, and that is true. Paul goes on to write, the trumpet shall sound, in verse 52. A trumpet called to rouse the bodies of the saints which have gone to corruption. This corruptible must put on incorruption, verse 53. A trumpet called to change the mortal bodies of those which are alive and remain. This mortal must put on immortality, verse 53. The spiritual body, that which is non-perishable and enduring, will be put on, never to be put off again. What a wonderful thought. It's the prospect and hope of every believer. And I wonder whether we really live in the light of it. Indeed, that challenge is how the apostle will finish dealing with the subject, and we'll look at that next week in the will of the Lord.